The red wine tasted like vinegar and broken promises, but I kept drinking it anyway. That's what you do when you're Pete Callahan, 39 years old, sitting in a cramped apartment that smells like microwave dinners and regret, watching your wife of 15 years text someone who isn't you at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. Another late showing tomorrow, Marissa announced without looking up from her phone, her manicured fingers dancing across the screen with the kind of urgency she used to reserve for me. The Henderson property. Big commission, if it goes through. I nodded and took another sip of the cheap Merlot, letting the bitter liquid burn down my throat. Real estate in Cleveland wasn't exactly booming, but Marissa had been having a lot of late showings lately. Funny how they always seemed to happen when her boss, Vincent Carbone, was also working late. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Dad knows you're lying," came a voice from the kitchen doorway. Our daughter Lexi stood there in her college sweatshirt, arms crossed, looking at her mother with the kind of cold disappointment that could freeze hell over. At 19, she had inherited my cynicism and her mother's sharp tongue, a dangerous combination. "Excuse me?" Marissa's head snapped up, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the lamplight. Even at home, she looked like she was ready for a photo shoot. "That's what 15 years in real estate does to you. Everything becomes about presentation." "Nothing, Mom. Just saying Dad's not stupid." Lexi grabbed a water bottle from the fridge and headed toward the stairs. "Night, Dad. Try not to drink all the wine. You'll need some for tomorrow." After she disappeared upstairs, the silence stretched between Marissa and me like a taut wire. I could hear the neighbor's television through the thin walls, some late-night talk show host making jokes that weren't funny. Mrs. Duffy next door had her volume cranked up to 11 as usual. "She's getting attitude," Marissa said, finally putting her phone down. "Maybe you should talk to her." "About what? Telling the truth?" Marissa's green eyes flashed with something that might have been guilt or might have been anger. With her, it was hard to tell the difference anymore. "I work hard for this family, Pete. Those late showings pay for Lexi's college, for this apartment, for everything we have." "Right. Vincent Carbone's really looking out for our family." The name hung in the air like smoke. Marissa's face went pale, then flushed red. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I used to be a cop, Marissa. I noticed things, like how you started wearing that new perfume around the same time Carbone became your boss, or how you've been getting texts at all hours from someone listed as VC in your contacts, or how you think I'm too stupid to put two and two together." She stood up abruptly, her wine glass nearly toppling over. "You're being paranoid, Pete. Just because your career didn't work out the way you wanted doesn't mean you have to sabotage mine." That hit like a punch to the gut, but I'd learned to take hits. 8 years as a Cleveland cop teaches you that, even if it doesn't prepare you for the kind of betrayal that comes from inside your own home. Now I worked private security for a supermarket chain, watching teenagers shoplift energy drinks and middle-aged women stuff steaks down their purses. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. "My career didn't work out because I got tired of seeing people lie, cheat, and steal," I said quietly. "Funny how that followed me home?" Marissa grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I'm staying at Tasha's tonight. Maybe by tomorrow you'll remember how to treat your wife with respect." The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat there for a long moment, listening to her car start and drive away, then poured myself another glass of wine. It still tasted terrible, but at least now I knew why. "Dad?" Lexi's voice came from the top of the stairs. "Yeah, kiddo?" "She's not at Tasha's." "I know. And this isn't the first time." "I know that too." She came down the stairs and sat on the couch next to me, pulling her knees up to her chest. "So what are you going to do about it?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She had my dark hair and stubborn jaw, but her mother's intelligence. Maybe too much intelligence for her own good. "What do you think I should do?" "I think," she said carefully, "that Mom's about to find out why you don't mess with an ex-cop who has nothing left to lose." The next morning brought gray skies and the kind of cold October rain that makes Cleveland feel like the end of the world. I was sitting in my security office at Brennan's supermarket, watching grainy black and white footage of the produce section, when my old partner, Doug Martinez, walked in with 2 cups of coffee and a grin that meant trouble. "You look like hell, Callahan," he said, setting 1 cup down on my desk. Doug was still on the force, still carrying the weight of the badge I'd given up 3 years ago. He was also the only person who knew exactly why I'd left, and it wasn't because of some noble principle about honesty. "Feel worse than I look," I admitted, taking a sip of the coffee. It was strong enough to wake the dead, which was exactly what I needed. Marissa didn't come home last night. The real estate queen finally showing her true colors? Something like that. I'd known Doug for 15 years, since we were both rookies trying to figure out how to survive on the streets. If there was anyone I could trust with this mess, it was him. I need a favor. Name it. Vincent Carbone. He's got his fingers in half the property development in the city. I want to know what kind of man my wife's been spending her evenings with. Doug's expression darkened. Carbone's bad news, Pete. Word around the precinct is he's got connections to some very unfriendly people. Nothing we can prove, but the kind of guy who makes problems disappear. What kind of problems? The kind that involve zoning permits, building inspections, and city council votes. He's been buying up properties in the warehouse district, turning them into luxury condos. Somehow all his projects get fast-tracked through City Hall while everyone else waits months for approval. I thought about Marissa's sudden success in real estate, the expensive clothes, the new car. How long has this been going on? About 6 months, right around the time your wife started working for him. The pieces were starting to fit together, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. Doug, I need you to do something for me that's probably not entirely legal. I'm listening. Carbone's got an office in that glass tower downtown. I want to know who goes in and out of there, especially after hours, and I want to know what kind of car he drives. Doug was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Pete, whatever you're thinking of doing, maybe you should think twice. Carbone's not the kind of guy you want as an enemy. He made himself my enemy the minute he started sleeping with my wife. You sure about that? I pulled out my phone and showed him a text message I'd intercepted from Marissa's phone that morning while she was in the shower. It was from VC, sent at 11:47 p.m. the night before. Thanks for a perfect evening. Can't wait to make this permanent. Doug whistled low. Damn, Pete. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Help me figure out how to make him pay. That evening, I was sitting in my car outside Carbone's building when Lexi called. Dad, where are you? Working late. Why? Because Mom's home and she's on the phone with someone. She's talking about you. What's she saying? Hold on. There was a pause, then Lexi's voice came back, quieter now. She's saying you're getting suspicious and that maybe it's time to make the transition. Dad, what does that mean? I felt my blood turn to ice water. It means your mother's planning to leave me for Vincent Carbone. There's more. She's talking about the house, about selling it. And Dad, she mentioned something about making sure you don't get anything in the divorce. I watched the lights in Carbone's office window, saw two silhouettes moving close together. Lexi, I want you to pack a bag and stay at your friend Sarah's house tonight. Why? What's going to happen? I'm not sure yet, but I want you somewhere safe while I figure it out. Dad, you're scaring me. Good. That means you're paying attention. Pack the bag, kiddo. And Lexi. Yeah? Whatever happens next, remember that I love you more than anything in this world. That's never going to change. After I hung up, I sat in the dark car and watched my wife embrace another man through the window 40 stories above me. The rain drummed on the roof like fingers tapping out a funeral march, and I began to plan. 3 days later, I was sitting in Mickey's bar with Doug and two other guys I'd known since my cop days. Tommy Brennan, who owned the supermarket chain I worked for, and Ray Santos, a private investigator who specialized in divorce cases. The bar was the kind of place where conversations stayed private and bartenders had selective hearing. So let me get this straight, Ray was saying, nursing a beer and looking at the photos Doug had taken outside Carbone's building. Your wife's been playing house with this developer for 6 months, and now she's planning to divorce you and take everything? That's the size of it, I confirmed. But here's the thing, I don't think she knows that I know. She's still playing the loving wife at home, still talking about our future together. Tommy leaned forward, his thick Irish accent making every word sound like a threat. What do you need from us, Pete? Information, leverage, and maybe a little creative justice. Doug spread out a manila folder on the table. I did some digging on Carbone. Turns out he's got a weakness, his reputation. Guy's obsessed with being seen as successful, respectable. He's got political ambitions, wants to run for city council next year. What kind of dirt are we talking about? The kind that would end those ambitions real quick. He's been using shell companies to buy up properties, then flipping them to the city for homeless shelters and low-income housing. Only problem is, the properties aren't suitable for housing. They're contaminated industrial sites. The city's been paying premium prices for worthless land. Ray whistled. That's fraud on a massive scale. Gets better, Doug continued. Guess who's been the real estate agent handling most of these transactions? The bottom dropped out of my stomach. Marissa. Your wife's been Carbone's inside woman from the beginning. She's got access to city records, knows which properties are coming up for auction, knows which council members can be bought. She's not just sleeping with the guy, she's his partner. Tommy slammed his beer down on the table. Jesus, Pete, she's been playing you for a fool. Yeah, well, the game's about to change. I looked at each of them in turn. I need to know if you're with me on this, because what I'm planning isn't exactly legal, and it's definitely not nice. What did you have in mind? Ray asked. I'm going to destroy them both, publicly, completely, and permanently, but I'm going to do it in a way that leaves them alive to suffer through the consequences. Doug grinned. Now you're talking like the Pete Callahan I used to know. The plan we hatched over the next 2 hours was beautiful in its simplicity. Doug would use his police connections to gather evidence of the fraud. Ray would document Marissa and Carbone's affair with photos and recordings. Tommy would use his business connections to spread word about Carbone's dirty dealings to the right people, city council members, newspaper reporters, federal investigators. And me? I was going to make sure that when the hammer fell, it fell hard enough to crush them both. There's one more thing, I said as we were getting ready to leave. Marissa's got 2 friends who've been enabling this whole thing, Tasha Morrison and Ronnie Walsh. They've been covering for her, providing alibis, probably laughing about what a fool I am behind my back. You want us to include them in the payback? Doug asked. Oh, they're going to get theirs. But I've got something special planned for those 2. As I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not the kind of hope that comes from believing things will get better, but the kind that comes from knowing you're about to make them worse for all the right people. Marissa was waiting for me when I got home, wearing a silk nightgown and a smile that would have fooled me a week ago. Where were you, honey? I was worried. Just having a drink with the guys. You know how it is. She moved closer, running her hands up my chest. Maybe we could have our own drink. I bought a bottle of that wine you like. I looked down at her. This woman I'd loved for 15 years, this woman who was planning to destroy me, and smiled back. That sounds perfect, sweetheart. Let me just check on Lexi first. But when I got upstairs, Lexi's room was empty. There was a note on her pillow. Dad, staying at Sarah's like you said. Be careful. I love you. P.S. Mom's wine is in the kitchen. The bottle with the red ribbon. I found the bottle sitting on the counter, an expensive Bordeaux with a note attached. To new beginnings. V. Vincent Carbone had sent my wife wine to celebrate their affair, and she was planning to serve it to me while she lied to my face about loving me. I poured 2 glasses, took a sip of mine, and went back downstairs to where my wife was waiting. To us, she said, raising her glass. To getting exactly what we deserve, I replied. We drank, and I watched her face carefully, looking for any sign of guilt or remorse. There was nothing, just the practiced smile of a woman who'd gotten very good at lying. 20 minutes later, she was unconscious on the living room floor. I didn't poison my wife. Let me make that clear right up front, because when the police inevitably asked, and they would ask, I wanted to be able to tell the truth. What I did was slip her a couple of sleeping pills dissolved in the wine, the same prescription sleep aids she'd been taking for months and leaving scattered around the house like breadcrumbs. When she woke up 12 hours later in our bed, I was sitting in the chair by the window, fully dressed, drinking coffee and reading the morning paper. Pete? Her voice was groggy, confused. What happened? I feel terrible. You passed out last night. I think you mixed your sleeping pills with wine again. I've been telling you that's dangerous. She sat up slowly, holding her head. I don't remember taking any pills. You don't remember a lot of things lately, Marissa, like where you really go during those late-night showings. Her face went pale. What do you mean? I folded the newspaper and looked at her directly. I mean, I know about Vincent Carbone. I know about the affair, the fraud, the plan to divorce me and take everything. I know about it all. For a moment, she just stared at me. Then something shifted in her expression, and the woman I'd married disappeared, replaced by someone cold and calculating. How long have you known? Long enough to do something about it. She laughed, actually laughed. What are you going to do, Pete? You're a washed-up ex-cop working security at a grocery store. Vincent has connections, money, power. You have nothing. We'll see about that. I left her sitting there and went to work, where Doug was waiting with a manila envelope thick enough to choke a horse. Christmas came early, he said, grinning. We've got photos, bank records, city documents, the whole 9 yards. Your wife and her boyfriend have been very busy and very sloppy. The evidence was damning. Photos of Marissa and Carbone entering and leaving hotels, bank records showing payments from shell companies to Marissa's real estate account. City documents with forged signatures approving the sale of contaminated properties for housing projects that would never be built. This is enough to put them both in prison, I said. That's just the appetizer, Doug replied. Ray's got something even better. Ray Santos walked into my office carrying a small digital recorder. I've been following your wife's friends, Tasha and Ronnie. Turns out they like to drink and gossip at Martini's downtown every Thursday night. Last night I got a table close enough to hear everything. He pressed play, and I heard Tasha's voice, slightly slurred from alcohol. I can't believe Marissa's actually going through with it. Poor Pete has no idea what's coming. Ronnie's voice. Vincent's got it all planned out. Once the divorce is final, they're going to sell all the properties and move to Florida. Pete won't see a dime. Tasha again. What about Lexi? She's not stupid. She knows something's up. Vincent says they'll deal with Lexi when the time comes. Maybe send her to boarding school or something. Get her out of the way. The recording continued for another 10 minutes, with both women laughing about my situation and discussing details of the plan I hadn't even suspected. By the time it was over, I was ready to commit murder. Easy, Pete, Doug said, seeing the look on my face. We're going to get them, but we're going to do it smart. What's the next step? Tonight, there's a city council meeting about the homeless shelter project. Carbone's going to be there, along with half the city's power brokers. It would be a shame if someone accidentally leaked all this information to the press. Tommy Brennan had been quiet during the whole conversation, but now he spoke up. I've got a better idea. My cousin works for Channel 8 News. What if we arranged for them to be at the meeting with cameras rolling when the evidence gets presented? You mean ambush them on live television? I mean give them enough rope to hang themselves in front of the whole city. I thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. Do it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Doug contacted his sources in the FBI's white-collar crime division. Ray prepared copies of all the evidence for the media. Tommy made calls to every city council member who wasn't already in Carbone's pocket. And me? I went home to have dinner with my wife and pretend everything was normal while she lied to my face one last time. How was work, honey? She asked, serving me a plate of pasta like we were still a happy couple. Interesting. We had some excitement at the store, caught a shoplifter trying to steal steaks. Turns out he was part of a bigger operation, stealing from multiple stores and selling the meat to restaurants. That's terrible. People have no shame anymore. No, I agreed, looking directly at her. They really don't. After dinner, she announced she had another late showing. With Vincent? I asked casually. She hesitated for just a moment. With Mr. Carbone, yes. The Patterson property. It's a big sale. I'm sure it is. Drive carefully, sweetheart. You never know what kind of surprises might be waiting out there. She kissed me on the cheek, actually kissed me, and walked out the door to meet her lover, having no idea that in 3 hours both their lives would be over. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then called Lexi. It's time, kiddo. You ready for this? I've been ready since I was 16 and figured out what Mom was really doing during those weekend business trips. Then let's go watch the fireworks. The Cleveland City Council chambers were packed that night, standing room only, with local news cameras positioned around the room like artillery pieces. Vincent Carbone sat in the front row wearing a $1,000 suit and the kind of confident smile that comes from believing you own the room. Marissa sat beside him, playing the role of professional real estate agent, her blonde hair perfect under the television lights. They had no idea they were about to become the main attraction at their own public execution. I stood in the back with Lexi, Doug, Ray, and Tommy, watching as the council went through the preliminary business. The homeless shelter project was item 7 on the agenda, right after the budget discussion and just before public comments. Ladies and gentlemen, Council President Janet Walsh announced, we now come to the proposed homeless shelter project in the Warehouse District. Mr. Vincent Carbone, the project developer, will present his proposal. Carbone stood up, buttoning his jacket with theatrical flair. He was a handsome man in his early 40s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of tan that comes from expensive vacations. I could see why Marissa was attracted to him. He had everything I didn't: money, power, connections, and the ruthless ambition to use them all. Thank you, Madam President, he began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. The Carbone Development Group is proud to present a comprehensive solution to Cleveland's homeless crisis. We have identified 12 properties in the Warehouse District that can be converted into temporary housing facilities, providing shelter for up to 500 individuals. He clicked a remote, and a PowerPoint presentation appeared on the wall screen behind him. These properties, currently owned by the city, represent a total investment of $2.8 million. My company is prepared to purchase them at fair market value and begin construction immediately. The audience murmured appreciatively. It sounded like a generous, civic-minded proposal. Carbone was good at this. I had to give him credit for that. The properties have been thoroughly inspected by certified real estate professional Marissa Callahan, he continued, gesturing toward my wife, and found to be suitable for residential conversion. That was my cue. I nodded to Doug, who pulled out his phone and sent a text message to his contact at the FBI. 30 seconds later, Agent Patricia Coleman walked into the chamber with 2 other federal agents and took seats in the middle section. Carbone noticed them immediately. His presentation faltered for just a moment before he recovered his composure. But I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes, and I knew he was starting to understand that something was wrong. "Are there any questions about the proposal?" Council President Walsh asked. I raised my hand. "I have a question." All heads turned toward me. Carbone's face went white when he saw me standing there. Marissa's mouth fell open in shock. "State your name for the record," Walsh said. "Pete Callahan. I'm a private security consultant and a Cleveland resident." I paused, making eye contact with my wife. "I'm also Marissa Callahan's husband." The room erupted in whispers. The news cameras swung toward me like predators scenting blood. "Mr. Carbone," I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "you mentioned that these properties have been inspected and found suitable for housing. Are you aware that 7 of the 12 properties you want to purchase are built on contaminated industrial sites?" Carbone's lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit, jumped to his feet. "Objection. This is not a court of law, and Mr. Callahan has no standing to—" "Are you aware," I continued, ignoring the lawyer, "that your company has been using shell corporations to manipulate property values and defraud the city of Cleveland?" "This is outrageous," Carbone shouted. "I demand that this man be removed from the chamber." Agent Coleman stood up, showing her FBI badge. "Actually, Mr. Carbone, we'd like to hear what Mr. Callahan has to say." The room fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop in that chamber as I walked down the aisle toward the front, carrying a manila folder thick with evidence. 3 months ago, I began, Carbone Development Group purchased the Morrison Industrial Complex for $50,000 through a shell company called Great Lakes Properties. The complex sits on land contaminated with heavy metals and industrial chemicals, a fact documented by the EPA and available in public records. I handed a copy of the EPA report to Council President Walsh. Yesterday, Mr. Carbone offered to sell that same property to the city for $400,000 as part of this homeless shelter project. That's an 800% markup on a property that can't legally be used for human habitation. The cameras were rolling now, capturing every word. Carbone was sweating under the lights, his confident demeanor cracking like ice in spring. Furthermore, I continued, the real estate agent who certified these properties as suitable for housing, Marissa Callahan, has been having an extramarital affair with Mr. Carbone for the past 6 months. She has a direct financial interest in seeing these fraudulent transactions approved. Marissa stood up, her face flushed with rage and humiliation. "You bastard! How dare you—" "How dare I what?" I turned to face her directly. "Tell the truth? Expose the fact that you've been stealing from the city while planning to divorce me and take everything I own? How dare I reveal that you and your lover have been laughing about what a fool I am while you plot to destroy my life?" I pulled out Ray's digital recorder and set it on the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to hear a conversation between Mrs. Callahan's closest friends, recorded last night at Martini's restaurant." I pressed play, and Tasha's voice filled the chamber. "I can't believe Marissa's actually going through with it. Poor Pete has no idea what's coming." The recording played for 2 minutes, laying out the entire conspiracy in my wife's friend's own words. By the time it ended, Marissa was crying, and Carbone was heading for the exit. "Mr. Carbone," Agent Coleman called out, "I think you should stay. We have some questions for you." He stopped at the door, trapped between the FBI agents and the cameras. When he turned around, all the arrogance was gone from his face, replaced by the desperate look of a cornered animal. "This is all lies," he said weakly. "Pete Callahan is a disgruntled ex-cop with a grudge against successful people. None of this evidence is admissible in court." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not admissible in court. But we're not in court, are we? We're on live television, in front of the entire city, with FBI agents taking notes and news cameras recording every word." I turned to address the cameras directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what corruption looks like. This is how the powerful prey on the weak, how they steal from taxpayers and laugh about it over expensive wine. Vincent Carbone and Marissa Callahan thought they were above the law, above consequences, above justice." I smiled, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. They were wrong. The chamber erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted questions, council members demanded order, and FBI agents moved to surround Carbone and Marissa. In the middle of it all, I stood at the podium, watching my wife's life collapse in real time, and felt absolutely nothing but satisfaction. Justice, it turned out, tasted a lot better than cheap wine. 6 months later, I was sitting on the deck of my new house, a modest place in a quiet neighborhood where nobody knew my story, grilling burgers and watching Lexi study for her finals. The evening news was playing on the outdoor television, and the lead story was about Vincent Carbone's sentencing. Former Cleveland developer Vincent Carbone was sentenced today to 8 years in federal prison for fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering, the anchor announced. Carbone's scheme to defraud the city through contaminated property sales cost taxpayers an estimated $3.2 million. The camera cut to footage of Carbone being led away in handcuffs, his expensive suit replaced by an orange jumpsuit, his confident swagger reduced to a defeated shuffle. His co-conspirator, real estate agent Marissa Callahan, received a sentence of 5 years in federal prison, the anchor continued. Both defendants were also ordered to pay full restitution to the city of Cleveland. I turned off the television and focused on the burgers. Lexi looked up from her textbook. "Do you ever feel bad about it, Dad? About what happened to Mom?" I considered the question carefully. I feel bad that it had to happen. I don't feel bad that it did happen. That's a pretty fine distinction. Your mother made her choices, kiddo. She chose to lie, to steal, to cheat, and to betray the people who loved her. I just made sure she faced the consequences of those choices. Lexi nodded and went back to her studying. She was majoring in criminal justice now, inspired, she said, by watching her father fight for what was right. I wasn't sure I deserved that kind of admiration, but I wasn't going to argue with it. The doorbell rang, and I found Doug Martinez standing on my front porch with a bottle of wine and a grin. "Thought you might want to celebrate," he said, holding up the bottle. "It's the good stuff, none of that cheap garbage you used to drink." We sat on the deck and opened the wine while the sun set over Cleveland. It was a beautiful evening, warm and clear, with the kind of golden light that makes everything look like a painting. "Any regrets?" Doug asked. "About which part?" "Any of it. All of it." I thought about Marissa, sitting in a federal prison cell, probably still believing she was the victim in all this. I thought about Carbone, learning what it felt like to have his life controlled by someone else's decisions. I thought about Tasha and Ronnie, who had lost their jobs and their reputations when their role in the conspiracy came to light. "No," I said finally. "No regrets." "Even about Marissa? You loved her once." "I loved the woman I thought she was. Turns out that woman never existed." I took a sip of the wine. It was excellent, smooth and rich without any bitterness. The woman I was actually married to was a stranger who happened to share my bed and my bank account. Doug nodded. "What's next for you?" "Lexi graduates next year. After that, I'm thinking about starting my own private investigation firm. Turns out I have a talent for uncovering the truth." "The Pete Callahan Detective Agency?" "Something like that." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking good wine and watching the stars come out. Somewhere across the city, my ex-wife was probably lying on a narrow prison bunk, staring at the ceiling and wondering how her perfect plan had gone so wrong. I hoped she was wondering. I hoped she lay awake every night thinking about the choices that had brought her to that cell, about the husband she'd betrayed and the daughter she'd been willing to sacrifice for money and passion. But mostly, I hoped she finally understood that actions have consequences, that betrayal has a price, and that sometimes the person you're trying to destroy is the one who ends up standing over your grave. "To justice," Doug said, raising his glass. "To getting exactly what we deserve," I replied. We drank, and the wine tasted like victory. Later that night, after Doug had gone home and Lexi had gone to bed, I sat alone on the deck with the last of the wine and thought about the past year. It had been a hell of a journey, from the night I discovered my wife's betrayal to the morning I watched her being sentenced in federal court. I'd lost a marriage, but I'd gained something more valuable. The knowledge that I could still fight for what was right, that I could still protect the people I loved, and that justice, while sometimes delayed, was never truly denied. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number, but I recognized the tone immediately. "I hope you're happy now. You destroyed everything good in my life." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back a single word. "Good." I deleted the number, finished my wine, and went inside to lock the doors. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to make a difference in the world. But tonight, I was exactly where I wanted to be, free, vindicated, and surrounded by the people who actually loved me. I raised my empty glass to the darkness and whispered, "Checkmate, Marissa." Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in years.